So there was, and still is, a ton for us to cover from the recent Smash Bros. Direct, which is why we've been covering different aspects of the game in our series of analysis videos, which you can check out via the links in the description below. And this time, we're starting up the old analysis machine to see what secrets all the stages shown for the Wii U version of Smash Bros. Might be hiding. Now, because we've already covered a lot about some of these stages back in our E3 analysis, we'll only be covering the new stuff here. So let's go ahead and start with the two mainstays of almost every Smash Bros. Game, being Battlefield and Final Destination. And actually, since Battlefield doesn't really reveal anything we didn't already know, let's skip right on over to Final Destination. Man, if only all the stages were that easy to cover. Okay, so Final Destination, unsurprisingly, shares not only the exact same shape as the ones before, but also appears to be almost exactly the same size as the one in Brawl, at least based on our very unscientific comparison using the character size as a reference. And as with Brawl, we can see the background will change here as well, alternating between at least this space-themed one and the sky version. And again, like Brawl, it appears it'll even rotate at points too. But of course, the version here looks freaking awesome, with the cool blue of the planet going up against a harsh fire red of the opposing sun, which is a theme you can see reflected on the main platform as well. And the interesting thing about those two colors, blue and red, is that they're also used in the logos for the Wii U and 3DS versions of this game respectively. And beyond that, as we noted in our overall analysis, the stage's theme also bears a striking resemblance to a combination of the Soul Edge and Soul Calibur swords from Soul Calibur. Is this just a coincidence, or could it hint at a deeper connection? After all, both games do share a common developer, being Namco. And that covers it for Final Destination, so let's move on to the brand new arena, starting with the boxing ring. Now, we've already covered this one pretty extensively before too. I mean, it's just a simple ring with walkways on either side they can battle on. What else is there to talk about? Well, a couple of things as it turns out, since we did learn a few new details. Now, while we had previously learned that the ropes can be jumped on thanks to Sakurai's Miiverse updates, we finally get to see it in action thanks to Diddy here, who does just that in this clip. And as you can see, it allows you to jump much higher than you normally would, which could be useful for getting away from an opponent or coming in from above with a sneak attack. But we're not sure if bouncing off the ropes is automatic or requires you to press the jump button, such as when bouncing off a fellow player in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Another detail that we had previously learned about is that this arena will actually have two different versions. There's the generic Smash Bros. Version and another themed to Punch-Out. But what we didn't know is how this would work. We had previously theorized that the version you play in might be dependent on whether Lil Mac was in the match or not, but that's totally not the case, as Lil Mac can be seen here battling in the generic Smash Bros. Version. Which likely means that this is something randomly decided at the start of the match. Although you may be able to choose which one of the two you want to play on as well, just like with the Mushroom Kingdom stage in Smash Bros. Brawl. Although we do have one other semi-wild idea. We can't help but wonder the version you play on might dictate whether stage hazards will appear or not. So the generic Smash Bros. Version would be hazard-free, like Final Destination, whereas the Punch-Out version would have Punch-Out themed hazards. Maybe some of Lil Mac's opponents could appear as boss characters. Yeah, we're just guessing, but you never know. Now, as part of that stage transformation, the LCD screens in the background even changed to flash either the words Smash Brothers or Punch-Out. But as it turns out, those screens also respond dynamically to what's happening during the match. For instance, whenever someone scores a knockout on an opponent, the screens light up and flash KO. And look what happens here during Lil Mac's Final Smash transformation. The screens display the word chance. And it happens again during Kirby's Final Smash too. It's a nice little touch, as if the screens are saying this is your chance to turn things around. Huh, who knew a boxing ring stage would have so many details? Alright, well, let's move on to the Windy Hill stage from Sonic Lost World. And this time, we finally get a really good look at how it's actually designed, with a long slope platform in the middle and 3 smaller platforms above. Although if you fall off, you may just be saved by the springs that can be found on either side, although it appears that they don't provide that much of a bounce. Also, as we can see here, they actually spin very slowly, so the angle they're at will likely affect where exactly you end up. But interestingly, in this clip we can see that the right spring is missing, and in another scene the left one's gone. But where did they go? Do they only have a certain amount of bounces in them before being destroyed? Now, besides the springs, there's a giant carousel-like thing on the right side that's so large it even extends off-screen. And Sakurai's even suggested before that riding it off-screen will result in a KO, so you'll have to be careful. Especially because that wheel doesn't exactly rotate at a constant speed. Check it out. Here it is at moderate speed, and here it is again spinning considerably faster. Sometimes it'll stop entirely too, or it might even switch directions. Yeah, that thing can't make up its mind. Another stage that we finally get a much better look at is Mario Galaxy. Now, we've already discussed this stage in depth before, but now we get a better look at some of the finer details, such as the spaceships in the background that zoom around, and we can even see that star bits will periodically fly in and explode upon impact with the ground. But perhaps the coolest thing is that we finally get an idea of how the gravity will work here. Check out the Wii Fit trainer in this scene, for example. After being blasted away, she falls back toward the planet diagonally, as if being pulled to the center of the arena. And we can see other characters being similarly affected by the gravity too, such as Diddy's trajectory here, which arcs along the ground. And same thing for Samus here. It even goes beyond just being knocked around, as Charizard's Flare Blitz attack curves along with the surface too, which suggests that similar moves like Fox's side special and perhaps even other things like projectiles might as well. And in case you're wondering, it appears that the Final Destination version of this level doesn't share the gravity gimmick. Next up is Palutena's temple, which is gigantic. In fact, we even made an entire video about how large it is, showing that it dwarfs both Hyrule Temple and New Pork City from Smash Bros. Brawl. Yep, it's huge. So let's take a quick tour of what all's on offer here. And let's start with this section on the left that consists of a bunch of stationary platforms. But just above them is a much larger one, and if you speed up and loop this clip here, we can see it actually moves too. But how low will it go? We're not sure exactly, but it does look like you'll be able to use these platforms on the right to help reach it. Now just below that area, you'll find a temple room with a stationary spike ball floating near the ceiling, which appears as if it may be quite dangerous, particularly given how many ways there are in which to exit this room. And speaking of exiting, it looks like the springs here should make it pretty easy to escape out the top. Now outside the temple room on the right, you'll find 3 moving platforms that appear to move in a clockwise manner, and you'll be able to use them to cross between the room and the floating platforms over here. And above those, we have this giant disc-shaped platform directly in front of Palutena's statue. And this is where many of the scenes from this level take place. But check this out. While all of those scenes are at ground level, if we speed up and loop the introductory clip again, you can actually see this platform rising from the ground. But how high will it go? Well, we think we have some idea, because just right at that platform is this odd-looking structure. And if you take a closer look at it in this scene, it looks like it might actually be a ladder, which would make sense if you can use it to climb to that rising platform. So if we zoom out again, we might expect that platform to go about that high. And in doing so, it would open up an alternate passage to the area below. In fact, we can even see that opening in this scene. Now on the other side of that circular platform is a bridge, and one that's pretty shoddily made apparently, as it has a potential of giving out as shown here. But we're not sure why exactly it gives out. I mean, from what we can tell, nothing seems to trigger it, as none of the attacks here even hit it directly. Is something off screen causing it? Or maybe it collapses from too much weight? Either way, we think it's a safe bet that will eventually respawn, as with the Bridge of Eldin in Brawl. Although, when it does collapse, make sure to watch out for those nasty looking spikes on the right side. And speaking of spikes, did you notice that some can be found on the underside of the cavern here? Is that just for decoration, or could it hint that even more platforms might be found below? Or alternatively, they might be there to discourage people from using their recoveries to circle underneath from one end of the room to the other. Okay, we're almost done covering Palutena's temple, but there's one final detail I wanted to point out that was brought to our attention by one of our fans, Video Tanuki. So do you remember that circular platform over here next to the ladder? I hope you do, because it was like a minute ago. Well, in several gameplay clips, we can see that very same platform, only there's no ladder in sight. In fact, the ground on either side appears to be missing too, which likely means we're looking at the Final Destination version of this stage. Pretty sneaky there, Sakurai. Alright, moving on, we have the Garden of Hope from Pikmin 3. And this is another stage that we've covered extensively before, and there really isn't that much new to talk about this time either. Well, I guess we did learn that you'll be able to stand on top of the stick here. And we did get confirmation that there are in fact 2 tin can platforms, one on either side, both of which are suspended by rope. Now previously we had thought, like in Pikmin 3, that weighing one side down might cause the other side to rise. And while we don't know for sure that that's not the case, as no one's seen standing on one in the footage, we can see that the 2 platforms are perfectly level in every clip and picture released so far, even including pictures that have characters standing right on top of them, which likely means that they won't move at all. Finally, since it seems to be a running theme in the recent Smash Bros. Games that bridges are a very dangerous thing, we can't help but wonder the one here might collapse as well. Moving on, we have the Pilotwings stage, and while the Direct didn't reveal that much that's new, I thought we'd give a quick rundown on how it appears the stage will work. Okay, so even though the vast majority of the screenshots and footage released so far have shown the yellow plane as the primary vehicle, it appears that you'll actually begin the stage on the red plane here, based on this image from last year. And we say this because Sakurai added a caption saying takeoff, which suggests that you actually begin the level at a standstill, similar to the Halberd level, before the match begins with the plane actually leaving the runway. Now the cool thing is that the red plane here is actually based on the one from the original Pilotwings game on the Super Nintendo, which makes sense given that the island you're departing from is also from that game. And once you take off, the plane will then fly through a series of rings, which by the way are also directly from that game, on its way to Woohoo Island, which is a setting of Pilotwings Resort. But once you get close to that island, a seaplane from that very same game will actually approach, where the battle will then automatically switch to, as demonstrated here where it interrupts Fox's grab. And that seaplane will then pick up where the last plane left off, only this time taking you on a tour of famous island landmarks, which we're guessing might include going inside the volcano based on this scene and this picture, and the fact that you had to do that multiple times in the Pilotwings game. Oh, and did you notice that the rings have actually been updated from their retro look to match the more modern appearance of Pilotwings Resort for this portion of the stage? It's a neat touch. Now once your tour of Woohoo Island is done, a recent screenshot suggests that you'll return to the classic Super Nintendo Island and back to the red plane to begin the entire thing all over again. Okay, so that covers everything we know for sure, but there's still a couple of things we can't help but wonder about. For one, in several of the Pilotwings games, you could actually explore the levels at different times of day. Could that be the case here too? There's no sign of it yet, but other stages like Battlefield and the Animal Crossing one do something similar, so it's not entirely out of the question. But more importantly, while this game represents the majority of the Pilotwings games, it's still missing any reference to Pilotwings 64, which might make sense given that it was the only game in the series to lack a true airplane, but we're still hoping there's some kind of reference to it here. Moving on, we have Pyrosphere from Metroid Other M, and like with some of the other stages, there's not that much new to talk about here. I mean, you have your main platform, then the 4 sub-platforms above which appear to be stationary. But Sakurai did strongly hint that Ridley would be appearing here in the form of a boss character, a la the Yellow Devil. But we don't know much else about him besides the fact that he appears to be based on his Other M appearance, at least from what we can tell when part of his body briefly passes in front of the camera. Now the only other thing to note here is that we also got a look at the game's Final Destination form, but we noticed something interesting. The lava that's normally pouring in from the background appears to be missing entirely. And since we know the Final Destination versions of these levels will be stage hazard free, this might lend credence to the idea that lava will in fact be a hazard in the primary version of the stage, which wouldn't exactly be a huge surprise given that lava and acid have been common hazards in previous Metroid levels, but good to know all the same. Now another stage that we got to see a lot more of is the Wii U Animal Crossing stage, now called Town and City. And for good reason, as we can see that the platform you're fighting on will actually fly between the 2 locations throughout the match, which is pretty cool and unexpected. But did you catch the fact that the spectators in the background are actually waiting at a bus stop, as indicated by the sign here? And it seems that the bus stop actually rises from the ground in order to take in such a spectacle. And we can even see it drop away too. And yes, it's actually dropping as opposed to the main stage rising, as the background doesn't change. So we think that the main stage might just change locations every time the bus comes to pick up or drop off the passengers, as we can see the platform chasing after the bus in this scene. This also explains why the spectators appear to be different in several of the clips, as the bus presumably drops off a new group each time. Now, when traveling from one location to the next, did you catch that the world below rolls into view with the same rolling log effect as in the games themselves? It's pretty cool. It also appears that you'll be battling it out on just a single platform when traveling, as the 2 smaller ones are nowhere to be found. In fact, in the scene where you land in town, you can just barely see when the platforms are turning to the battlefield from the right side. Oh, and based on the different times of day we can now see, it seems likely that this stage, like Smashville and Miiverse, will use a Wii U's internal clock to determine the time of day, so it's good to see that back. Another stage that we got a bunch of new footage of was Skyloft, though it doesn't really reveal anything new besides a few new locations that you'll be touching down in. But we did notice during the traveling portion that the platform configuration will come in at least 2 different types, with either 4 in a battlefield style formation, or 3 with the 2 smaller ones side by side. Next up, we have the Wii Fit Studio, and again, there's not too much new to report on here either. Although we can see that the platforms, which are themed to balance boards by the way, will actually rise up out of the way periodically to allow for an unobstructed view of the mirror, which occasionally turns into a screen for some yoga exercises. And it appears that when the platforms do return afterward that they can take on several different configurations. But interestingly, in another scene we can see the platforms begin to rise up, and yet the mirror doesn't change, so maybe the 2 events aren't always connected. Oh, and speaking of balance boards, it looks like the little anthropomorphic one won't just stand around, but he'll run around too. It's kind of adorable. Our next stage is Wily's Castle from the Mega Man series. Now interestingly, we've covered this stage a bunch before too, but it actually has seen a few changes in the form of the platforms that traverse the level. Now, like when we first saw it at E3, we can see that the platforms will still follow a track that dynamically changes throughout the battle. You can even see the track appearing in this scene here. But we can now see that when the platform reaches a dotted portion of the track, they'll collapse, dropping anyone that's riding on top of them. And check this out, when the platforms aren't following a track, they'll appear as stationary platforms on the side with the lights turned off, as if they're powered down. And beyond that, it appears the platforms won't always be present, such as when the Yellow Devil appears, which we now know is a boss character. And just like in Mega Man 1, he'll attack in one of 2 ways, by firing shots from his eye, and by teleporting across the stage in individual pieces. Now his eye is also his weak point, though we can see he'll close it just before teleporting. So in order to take him down, you'll actually want to work together with your opponents. Though whoever lands the last hit will also earn a reward, as the explosion that results will count as KOs for that character. In fact, we can see here that the boss character even gains a player icon of his own, matching that of the player that inflicted the last hit. Alright, and that wraps it up for all the Wii U stages shown off in the Smash Bros. Direct. Or does it? Okay, yeah, there was a Halberd stage, but that one doesn't count since it appears to be identical to Brawl. But as it turns out, there was one more brand new stage briefly shown off in a pair of clips during Greninja's trailer, and is clearly based on the Pokemon League from Pokemon X and Y, what with the stained glass windows of the main hall in one scene, and the giant dragon statue from Drazna's chamber in another. And the platform that the battle takes place on even changes to reflect not just that area, but is also based on the varying floor patterns that appeared in each of the Elite Four's rooms. So even though we only see the main hall and Drazna's chamber here, we can't help but wonder the other 3 rooms of the Elite Four might appear too. But how will this work? I mean, is this a traveling stage where you go room to room? Or will the entire area just transition from one area to the next, kinda like the Fire Emblem stage in Brawl? It's also possible the backdrop is just randomly selected at the start of each match. Although we do have one crazy idea. What if Pokemon from the various trainers appear as boss characters in their respective rooms? And once you defeat them, you then move on to the next Elite Four challenger. Yeah, it's a stretch, but it would be pretty darn cool. As for the stage itself, it seems to be the exact same in both scenes, with a large main platform below and 2 smaller stationary ones directly above to either side. So yeah, it's pretty simple. Alright, and that wraps it up for everything we could dig up on the stages for Smash Bros. Wii U. As usual, if you missed anything, let us know by posting in the comments below. Thanks for watching, make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain.com for more Smash Bros. Analysis videos and other things gaming too.